You're going to like today's video. I promise. Today we are comparing a brand new Taylor 714 CE, something you guys should be very familiar with a 20-year-old version of the same model. It's going to be fun, so stick around. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on your notifications, like our videos. If you'd like to support the video, learn about becoming an insider at the link below. So today, as promised, we are going to be comparing a brand new guitar with a 20-year-old guitar, and this is always kind of dicey because if you know anything about acoustic guitars, it's kind of like wine, it gets better with age. Only once you pop the cork on these, you can continue to enjoy them. Anyways, we are going to be looking at what separates a 20-year-old 714 CE from a brand new one, because despite the fact that it's the same manufacturer and they are the same model, there is a load of differences between the new model and the old model. So let's talk about the one I've got first. This is a brand new, fresh out of the box, Taylor 714 CE. Now, we've reviewed this guitar numerous times on our channel. It is one of my favorites. It is a fantastic instrument. I love all of the wood binding and everything. Let's go over some of the specs. So 714 CE, it is a Grand Auditorium body shape. It has a cutaway with electronics using their ES2 pickup system. Everything so far, kind of normal there. The top on this is Lutz or Lutz spruce. Back and sides is East Indian rosewood. It has beautiful wood binding on it. It's got this great inlay, reflection inlay, I think is what it's called, up and down the ebony fingerboard, mahogany neck, and it's got Taylor's V-Class bracing. It's basically, what we expect in their modern guitars. And it's been one of the more popular models in Taylor's lineup for so many years, which is why it's so fun to compare it with what was going on 20 years ago. So let's talk about the old one. In fact, let's talk about the old one. JR made me say that. So this is the old one. This happens to be a model that we got in used. It is a 2002, so pretty much 20 years. It was actually, ready for this? It was built March 19th. So that's the birthday of this guitar. And this is pretty typical of an early 2000s 714 model. So the 700 series and the 500 series are very similar at that time. Similar inlay, similar appointments. The differences was basically the woods that were utilized. This is still a Grand Auditorium body shape. Nothing's changed there. Scale length the same. The neck's still mahogany. The fingerboard and bridge are still ebony. But you'll notice it has dot inlays, so the appointments have kind of gone up since the introduction of the new one. The binding is still wood bindings, rosewood in this particular case. The top, however, is very different, cedar. Now, if I recall correctly, from the catalogs that were available back then, that I have floating around my house somewhere, there was an option on these. You could either get it as Engelmann spruce or Western red cedar. Most of them were Western red cedar. It's just typically what you saw. The rosette is interesting, if you can see that. The rosette is actually koa. And it's an interesting way that Taylor did it. They were cutting out these chunks of koa in this kind of spiral shape that would fit in there into this, hand inlaid wood rosette on the guitar. The other thing that's a big departure is the electronics in this. Now, if you owned a guitar 20 years ago, this should look familiar. This is the Fishman Prefix Pro blend, right? Did I get that right? Yeah, the Prefix Stereo Blender. So this featured Fishman's undersaddle pickup, what you would typically see as like the Infinity Matrix pickup now, paired with a microphone that was underneath this. And we call this the barn door for this reason, because it opened up kind of like a barn door. Cut in the side of the guitar, you had access to the battery, the microphone's on the underside, clicked in place, you had controls with your preamp, and a blender that would go back and forth so you can choose how much microphone you wanted and how much pickup you wanted. Now, these were really good pickups. Fishman has something similar to this same pickup that carries on today, although these larger preamps have long become outdated. And some people asked me, actually I got the question the other day, why did Taylor move away from this? A lot of people like that sound. Well, two reasons. One, the sound of an undersaddle piezo pickup versus something like what Taylor's using, where it's behind the saddle, not under pressure, or like K&K or LR Bags where it's kind of mounted to the underside. Those are very, very different sounds, and what tends to be the norm with an undersaddle piezo pickup is a quackiness from the pressure. So I think Taylor's initial move away to the first ES system was because of that, and also because of string-to-string balance issues. If you've ever had a guitar with an undersaddle pickup, and you take all the strings off at once and you put them all on and you tune it up and you just kind of tune it up without any thought, sometimes that saddle will move and the pressure from string to string on the pickup element isn't the same. And so you'll have some strings that are very loud and some that aren't so loud. And in an environment where you're building guitars, that can really slow down production and become kind of a headache. And honestly, just owning them, I've had issues with guitars that had that, and it's kind of frustrating. So I think that was the reason for initially kind of moving away and doing their own thing. What's interesting now is that the current pickup system, the ES2, shares a lot of similarities with this design. It's just not under the saddle, so you don't have those balance issues. You can adjust each element, and it doesn't have that quackiness. So there you go. The other big thing that's different, other than how this looks and the woods used on the top of the guitar, is the bracing. This features Taylor's classic scalloped X bracing. Now that has been replaced across the entire lineup from Taylor on their US models. You can still find this basic bracing layout on any of their guitars that are made in the Mexico line. So if you look at a 114E or 214CE, the bracing pattern is pretty much, or at least very similar to what this bracing pattern is. If there's one thing that I've noticed in playing these two guitars today, just the very first thing is picking this up with Gold Grover tuners. Those are pretty classic too. And the weight of it. It's a much heavier guitar. Now I don't know how much of that has to be Taylor's bracing or the electronics in it, or kind of a combination of all of the above, but there's definitely something noticeable. And what's interesting about that is the fact that it's cedar. So they're both rosewood. I think the finish is probably thicker on this, and cedar tends to be lighter. So it's probably your bracing, and it's probably these Fishman electronics. Barn door preamps like this just tend to weigh more. So anyways, lots of fun comparing things that are over 20 years apart. Now I'm going to put them through their paces so you can hear in a demo. And here's what I'm going to tell you. They're going to sound vastly different. Just for the top woods alone, the bracing differences, and the fact that this has had 20 years to kind of mature and develop. And I'm not going to spoil this with my take at this point. I want you to hear for yourself, and then I'll tell you my thoughts on the other side. So check it out. So there you have it, a comparison with two guitars from Taylor, same model, 20 years apart. What are your thoughts? I'll tell you my thoughts, but I want you to comment below what you took away from it. I've gone on record of saying I love cedar. I think it's a fantastic wood, particularly if you have a light touch. I tend to play fingerstyle guitar. I like dynamics, and I think it responds very well to that style of playing. That being said, the top used on the 714, the Lutz or Lutz Spruce, is a fantastic top. It kind of marries a lot of the things that I like out of Engelmann and Sitka and Adirondack Spruce. It has a lot of volume to it, a lot of dynamic range. It tends to have a girthier sound to it than, say, like an 814 with a standard Sitka Spruce top does to my ear. But one of the things that I noticed, and I think it's, I'll put a disclaimer. This is a 20-year-old guitar, roughly. So there's probably some things going on with the fretwork and whatnot. But here's what I noticed playing it. I noticed that there are a lot more dead notes on the older 714 CE. I definitely, from the very get-go, noticed a difference in the tuning, the intonation of the guitar. The new 714 with the V-Class bracing, when I play a chord, it's just kind of spot on. When I play this one, it has something that I've picked up on other guitars, both older Taylors and newer guitars that have, you know, typical X bracing, and that is slight variations of what I'm hearing out of the guitar from an intonation standpoint. And it's not necessarily bad, it's just something that, you know, I now pay attention to or that my ear picks up on. And the dead notes could definitely be part of, you know, some fretwork on this guitar, but I don't think it is because of the way that it happened. It didn't seem like the note was fretting out or just dying prematurely. It just didn't have the strength of tone evenly across the fretboard, which was one of the benefits talked about with V-Class bracing. So, you know, I've gone on record, I'm a believer of V-Class bracing, but this is a great example to illustrate something that I read about on Facebook the other day from someone in a group that I'm part of in regards to Taylor guitars. And what they said was that to them, V-Class bracing sounds compressed. And I think I understand what they're saying, but I want to kind of, you know, if we can articulate sound with words, let's talk a little bit about it. I think this guitar, with its slight variations of tuning instability or intonation, whatever you want to call it, has in ways a slightly broader sound because of those inconsistencies. It's kind of like what happens when you utilize a stereo connection or stereo spread and mix, or using a chorus pedal on a guitar. Slight variations create a more colorful sound. It's not actually better in tune, it's worse in tune, but you can hear all of these things and your ear might or might not like it. So if you're playing just open chords, you might actually prefer that. But it's not compression. Compression is a change of dynamics. You're basically making quieter things louder and louder things quieter. That's not what's going on in the case of V-bracing, but I think people think of it that way because what you're hearing is a truer representation of the note and the overtones, particularly in a rosewood guitar, and there's this uniformity that you're not used to hearing in an acoustic guitar. I find them to be more dynamic and just have more dynamic range, have more volume and so forth. Again, I think I'm a believer in playing these two. I'm feeling up the neck as I play, truer notes. It seems to reward my playing. I like all of those things, but your mileage may vary. So if you play two or you own two, you own older ones, newer ones, and you've heard some of those things, that might be a good explanation for what your ear is actually hearing. Hopefully that made sense to you. Drop us a link below or a line below and tell us what you think. So anyways, lots of fun either way. I love these old guitars. Some of the late 90s and early 2000s are some of my favorite Taylors, and it's fun to compare it to the new stuff and see, even something with the same name, how far it's come over the years. So anyways, if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos, comment, let us know what you think. If you want to become an insider, click the link and join us over on Patreon for all the fun we're having there. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, at the end of the day, the best guitar in the world is the one that you are playing, whether it's brand new or 20 years old. So keep playing. See you next time.